Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Maleary and this is X Job Downloaded. And today I'm going to interview Faye Ford. Now, Faye is a former West Midlands police officer and she's now left the police to undertake her businesses as a wedding photographer and a travel expert, if you like. Yep. That's correct. In a nutshell. So, Faye, where did it all begin for you? Where are you from and what was your inspiration to join the police?
So I am from the West Midlands in a place called Walsall, and I'm unlike quite a lot of my people that I used to work with, police officers. They always had a passion, always wanted to join, and I had no interest at all in joining. I always wanted to travel as long as I can remember. When I was 14, I even wrote to, back in the days, they were called Owners Abroad, looking for a job, asking to be a holiday rep, if you remember them back in the day.
Yeah.
And they told me that I could be a holiday rep when I was 21. So I carried on at school. Still, that's all I ever wanted to do. But then I learned when I was 18 that you could actually be a holiday rep at 18, but look after children. So I can't say I'm a great fan. That's never what I wanted to do. I never wanted to work with children, although I love them, should I say. I went and studied and become a nursery nurse. And purely the reason why I did that is because I was desperate to go and work overseas. And when I was 19, I got my qualification and then that was it. I went and worked for, back in the day, it was called First Choice.
Yep.
Owners Abroad, then it went to First Choice and I was a children's representative. And then I progressed up the ladder. I became a 20s rep, which is the Young and Lively programme. And then from there, I became a resort manager and I spent about just under 8 years over there, working lots of wonderful destinations. The Canaries, the Balearics, mainland Spain, Benidorm. I even had a time in Benidorm, which was so much fun. And then my very, very last placement, I was an actual elf in Lapland.
An elf in Lapland?
I know. Not many people have got that on their CV, have they?
How did you get that job?
It was just offered to me. They were quite elite kind of roles, and it's a very short placement. I'd never worked winter. I am purely love the sunshine. Everywhere I worked, it was always sunny. And I just got offered it and I thought, you know what, why not? And it was a fantastic opportunity. The coldest place I've ever been to in my life. Minus 35 one day.
Wow.
All my eyelashes broke off. All my eyebrows broke off. It was so cold, but great fun. Really great fun.
And who was that with? What was that with First Choice as well?
Yeah, with First Choice.
Wow.
So and then when I came back from there, people were getting older in the family. So I decided I'm going to come back to the UK. And I came back to the UK thinking I needed this kind of normal kind of role. I needed to settle down. And I took quite a few jobs, sales manager jobs in a gym for Slimming World, in the hopes of trying to get thin all along these. And then just one day somebody said to me, you know what, you'd make a really good police officer. And I thought, really? You know, would I really? And I thought, I'll give it a try. So they were recruiting at that particular time. I'm only 5'1", and I thought there's no way whatsoever they will get, I will never get in there. And I just kind of went along and passed every stage of it, and even passed my fitness test, which I was so shocked, and then next thing I know, I'm on the beat in Handsworth over in West Midlands.
Yeah, I know Handsworth, the old smithy. Is it the old smithy pub?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
See,
yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, and I had a great career, 17 and a half years I spent in West Midlands Police, and I loved it. I loved the service. I love what we stand for. I'm very passionate about police officers, and I had a great career.
So what was the highlight of being in the police service? I mean, you were, how old were you then? 25, 26 when you joined the police?
I was nearly 30.
Nearly
when
30.
I joined the police. Yeah, just gone 30. Yeah, I was quite a late joiner.
So you were a grown up, because back in the day, once you got to 30, they wouldn't accept you. When I joined in 87, unless you'd been in the military.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're
That's
a grown
right.
up in a world of young and enthusiastic school leavers, or not school leavers so much, but younger people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that I had the life experience behind me. I'm not educated. I don't have any degrees. So the life experience that taught me from working abroad, believe it or not, there were so many things that are very similar to working in the police.
Yep.
I dealt with lots of situations where people had been put in, from deaths abroad to rapes to violent disorders. It's what people don't see behind the scenes, and it happens everywhere.
But that's really interesting, because the skill set, I always say that the transferable skills. Working as a holiday rep, you have to make those decisions. You've got to be customer focused. You've got to be IT literate. You've got to be all the things there as you would be. The only difference is that you've got a power of arrest when you join the police service. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's you've got a code practice that you have to stick very strictly to. But yeah, when you're a holiday rep, and when you're a holiday rep, you don't get trained for violent disorders. You don't get trained to deal with rapes. It's not in the manual. It's just stuff that, as a young 23-year-old, I was dumped in, and you deal with it.
But how regular were those? I mean, the violent disorders, we see those on the TV, and I can understand the sexual offences take. But how often did they actually take place?
Very often, especially working with the young programme. Not in Lapland. It never happened in Lapland. But I worked in places like Benidorm and Magaluf, and it was a common occurrence. There was always always something significant happening. We had a large amount of people that were looking after, a large amount of staff. Yeah, it was literally every week we were dealing with something quite chaotic.
And like you say, that if someone passes away overseas, there's issues. You've got to deal with local governments. You've got to deal with the national government as well. Go through all the procedures out there, and console a family, undoubtedly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had deaths from people jumping in the pool, people becoming seriously injured from fights, then natural deaths as well, and also suicides.
Oh, really?
It's a real host of things that you don't hear about, because you expect, when you go abroad, everything's just wonderful, isn't it? But yeah, behind the scenes, there's a lot going on.
I remember reading an article about a guy that worked in the hotel next to the Tower of London, and they had a sudden death there, and they had to get the person out literally on a food tray. It was they'd killed over in the corridor, and they had to get them out of the way. And it was quite an adventure. Where was your favourite place to work overseas?
I really have got a lot of love for Gran Canaria, because I spent a large amount of time there. I was there for 3 years, and I got to know all the locals, all the people, travelled around the island extensively. And yeah, I really love it. It's a great place, really wonderful place to visit.
Do you ever regret leaving that life?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I think I was young, and I thought, I've got to do whatever all my other friends are doing. I've got to come back, settle down. The days that I loved my career, and I've got a family, and I've got a husband, and I love all that side of things. But I also miss the freedom that living abroad gives you. That when you go on holiday and everything's kind of a bit more positive just because the sun is shining. It's very much like that when you're living over there as well.
Yeah,
you're dealing with all these horrific things, that are happening, and it's a real stressful job, but it didn't feel like stress. It's just a different environment.
You're tired in the sunshine instead of the pouring rain.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So you've joined the police. Did you go to Tally Ho or did you go to a regional training centre?
I went to Ryton. I was lucky enough to be one of the last intakes into Ryton, yeah. And so I did most of my training there and then some at Tally Ho.
I love Tally Ho. That's a place that's got a large part of my weight and my heart.
And I think a lot of us have got a few stories to tell about Tally Ho, haven't we?
We certainly can't publish most of them. So you've gone to Handsworth. Did you specialise whilst you were in the police service?
Yeah, I did. I did quite I did neighbourhood policing, frontline policing, just like most of us. Then I spent a large amount of time on the offender management team.
Oh, right.
And then my last 2 years, I was in the restorative justice team, which I loved. And is a really underrated role within the police. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the offender management side, is that dealing with registered sex offenders and the like? Yeah,
I touched on registered sex offenders, but my main core were acquisitive crime offenders, mainly burglars. Yeah, so I dealt a lot with burglary suspects.
And they're interesting people because they all do it for different reasons, don't they? Some do it for lifestyle, to supply their habits. Some do it because they like to be flash and walk around in somebody else's Rolex. Yeah, they fascinate me. It fascinates me, the mind, the way people do things. I'm really interested. But yeah, I loved talking. I loved finding the information out of them, why they do it. They've all got a code of conduct of themselves, and of what they will do and what they won't do. It's quite interesting to learn. But they've all got a code of conduct, but actually they're all informants because they've always got somebody to talk about. They've always got a story to tell, and they inadvertently drop their mates in it. So it is a fascinating world. And people won't understand what restorative justice is because it's not well publicised. And when it is, the public at large don't know what it means. So what does that actually mean?
I think people's impressions, and especially officers, they think it's this wishy-washy, pampering the offender, and it's really not. It is probably, I worked on the offender management for 8 years of my career, and the restorative process is probably the hardest thing I've ever seen some of the offenders go through. And I've seen offenders sit in court and get really large sentences and not bat an eyelid. And I've seen offenders sit in front of their victim and absolutely it is so painful for them to do, so embarrassed, so life-changing for some of them as well. So the restorative process is where a victim is in control of the whole process. It is totally done for the victim in mind. It is not done to change the offender's behaviour. If it's done, if that happens, that is fantastic. But it is done solely for the victim, and it's to help that victim have a voice. When a crime happens, we all know the victim is the one that isn't heard. They have no say of what happens in court. They have no say of the outcome most of the times, but they all have an awful lot of unanswered questions. They have a lot of trauma. They have a lot of things that they want to say to the person that has caused them harm. And that's what restorative justice does. It gives that victim a voice and gives them the opportunity to have a safe environment to communicate with that person that's caused them harm. And they do restorative process for lots of different areas. So they can do it for neighbourhood disputes. It's been really successful with that. Bullying at school, really successful. And then all the more serious types of crime like burglary and also murders. It's been used for families to meet people that have been victims of murder as well. So it's used across the whole spectrum.
I mean, you need a round of applause there because you've explained it better than anywhere else that I've read it. So, but you're quite right. I mean, let's make it clear. If somebody's been locked up for murder, they will get the opportunity to meet the family. They could still be serving, couldn't they, if they go and...
Yeah, we've done them inside prison, outside prison, done them in church halls, done them in police stations, wherever the victim feels they want that conversation.
And do you think, I mean, I'm speaking out loud here, but go back to those halcyon days of yore, and when we had your community policing teams, a lot of restorative justice took place when we had coppers walking the streets.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
You know, if you were a Bobby at Handsworth and you caught some little Herbert damaging something, you take them round to their mum and dad, and then you take them round to the person who it's done, and that person would make them clean the wall or pay their pocket money to fix the glass in the greenhouse, whatever it may be. But of course now we've got a process, which I understand, but it's, you know, there's got to be a fine balance there. And coppers aren't thanked for it anyway, are they? Not when they do it on the street. No, not at all. And conversations are the most important part of our job. You know, difficult conversations are really hard for everybody to have, but once they've had that difficult conversation, it can set everybody free. It's just, if those conversations aren't had, they can be carried within a person for years and years and years and cause real damage. Yeah.
Real damage.
And real damage on both sides. Because sometimes all we want to do sometimes is say sorry. And as the victim, we want somebody to say sorry. And that means an awful lot. Sometimes it means more than someone getting 6 weeks lockup for punching you on the nose.
And it's not about getting apologies. It is about the victim asking questions. And those questions, the biggest question that a victim wants to know is why. Yeah. They're not so much interested in that sorry, because sorry won't even cut it for a lot of them. The biggest question that I found is why. Why did you choose me? Why did you do it? What was it about my house? Why did you think you could do this to me? And it is just to watch in that room, have that conversation is probably one of the highlights of my career, is to sit and see people get all that out of the system.
That's fascinating. Do you think that the suspects actually believed in what they were doing?
In the, you mean meeting the victim?
Yeah.
I think, I don't think any of them that I've ever met have realised how hard and difficult it would be to listen to some whole truths. I mean, I've had a lot of victims that have just not held back and have got everything they've been thinking about that person in the head out at them. And it has been very difficult. I think it has helped people change. It has helped some offenders. I mean, some people have been committing crime for 20, 30 years and never have ever even met a victim in all that time. So
that's incredible. How can you commit crime for that long and never meet the person that you're impacting on the most? Yeah.
And all they've been is just lines read out in court when it's been to sentences, and they've never had to have that face-to-face. That face-to-face has been so difficult for them.
Yeah. But, I mean, did you ever have to sit in a room with a rape victim and the person, did it ever go as extreme as that?
No. West Midlands hired a company that came in and dealt with those type of offences. I'd just been trained to that level just before I did leave. But personally, I haven't dealt with a sexual offences case of that severity now.
Because I mean, they're all personal, but when it comes to a sexual offence, the personal element is so overwhelming.
Yeah,
that it doesn't matter how many times somebody, like say, tries to say sorry or explain why they did what they did. That must be for a victim, and good on the victim if that's what they want to do, if they feel that, that they need to do that. But yeah, I'm not so sure.
And that would always only ever be dealt with by the victim. So we would never, if an offender came to us and said, I want to meet my victim, that would never, ever happen.
No.
It would have to, or we wouldn't even approach the victim and have that conversation. It would only ever come if the victim had come to us and said, I really need this. And then we would explore it.
And the reason being is that if the suspect came forward, it could be another way of getting at that victim.
Yeah,
Another
it's the
form
same
of
with
bullying.
domestic offences. They don't tend to use it for domestic offences unless the victim really, really needs it. I mean, we have done it in some cases, but they've been quite extreme cases, and it's what the victim needed. And it's took us a long time to get to that process because of the, the control elements. From the offender, etc. Yeah, no, it's all managed, and it's managed really well, and it's really controlled.
So what was the motivation to actually leave the police service? Because you sound like you were enjoying the role, because it's very fulfilling. But why did you decide that enough was enough? I
loved the role that I was in. I'm very passionate about restorative justice. I believe in it to the core. I was getting to that stage in my life where I never wanted to get promotion. It was never for me. I never wanted to move up those ranks. And to be honest, I don't really agree with how some of the process is. As you get more experienced within the police and people get promoted, I've seen some really bad coppers get promoted, and there wasn't any good as police officers. So for them to go and to inspire the next generation, it's heartbreaking to watch. But it was everything that was happening around me. I am a real positive and motivated person. But the force isn't like that anymore. And I was watching lots of colleagues become unwell and extremely unwell for what they're seeing and what they're hearing and the way that they're being treated, and things that were happening within the force. I was losing confidence, complete and utter confidence.
In what way?
The pension challenge with the Federation, that was quite heartbroken to think that the Federation was meant to look after us and support us, and didn't do that, during that particular time. I've had colleagues that have made genuine mistakes within the police, and they have been absolutely witch hunted. And I don't believe for 1 minute I would ever put a foot wrong in the police. I've always had an exemplary record. But I've seen how people were treated just by making genuine mistakes. And I thought, I just don't want to be a part of it anymore. There's got to be, I want something else. I don't want to become unwell. I want to fill my head up with positive things as opposed to, really trauma. It takes its toll on you, doesn't it? And
it does.
Seeing that all the time and not being able to fix things, it does. I think you have a lifespan, and my time was coming to the end, and I was getting to that point where if I don't move, if I don't change, I am going to be as miserable as everybody else around me, and that's not me. That's not in my not in my bones.
And it's interesting that everybody is miserable. I think that is lost, but people stay there because they've got the regularity of wages. Yeah, I do agree. I think that the police are very unforgiving. There are times that police officers, when they do something wrong and they do something really, really, really wrong, they need to be dealt with. But when they make a genuine mistake, they come down and they're very harsh. And I think it's a point of some senior management flexing their muscles. Yeah, they feel that they need to do certain things in order to prove a point, hold somebody up to account. And going back to your point around the promotion, and I do agree, although I did get promoted, so there'll be people going, yeah, you're one of them. But and I waited a long time, but if you look at some of the senior managers, not all of them, but some of them, they are mediocre police officers. They were mediocre as constables, they were mediocre as sergeants, and they're now mediocre as chief officers because they didn't do anything that would ever get them into any trouble whatsoever. They never take a risk. They may have managed risks within reason, but they would have been the first ones where their pocketbook was up to date, but the last one to put their hand on somebody's shoulder and say, to say you're under arrest. So I absolutely agree with you. I just think that, modern policing promotes mediocrity because that way nobody's going to get into any trouble whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And how was it for you from a financial perspective? Because there's a big drive around the finances around the police. They've just got a pay rise, 6% pay rise. But in real terms, I had years where we didn't get a penny.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't realistically get a pay rise for 10 years. The money was never. Obviously, it's really important. I've got a family, and it was probably something that probably kept me tied into the police longer than probably I was ready to leave maybe 2-3 years ago. But it did, and it has a massive hold over you and the pension as well. But I lost my mum quite young. She was 50 when I lost my mum, and it's a really young age to somebody. But what it taught me is that tomorrow's not promised for any of us.
No, it's not.
It isn't. We are literally any of us, anything could happen, and without our health we've got nothing. None of us have got anything. And I did so much thinking. It was a real panic to me leaving the police, having that dedicated wage. We needed it. We didn't need it for extravagant things. We need it to pay bills.
Yeah.
And I got to that stage where I thought, you've got to do it. If it doesn't work out, I can go back. I can go and be a police officer. I can go and work in the control room. I'll go and clean if I have to, but I'll make that money. But there's one thing I couldn't live with, and that's the regret, the regret of not trying.
Well, I think that's commendable. But you'd already started a business whilst you were in the police, hadn't you?
Yeah. So I started the wedding photography quite early on into joining. It was when I had my first child. So I started dipping my feet into it and learning about photography. And I spent about 3-4 years learning, doing weddings, sometimes free of charge or just for expenses. And then the last 10 years, it really kicked off, and I kind of found my niche. And I was shooting about 20 weddings a year, which doesn't seem like an awful lot of work, but it is when you think of the editing.
Yeah.
And then obviously COVID, that just wiped my business out completely. Went from having 25 weddings booked in, and then I went down to 3. But what that did was, with postponements, it built on the year that I was intending to leave the police. So I knew that I'd got some income providing COVID didn't hit, and I knew that I would be okay, and I would need to make a certain amount, etc. I was able to forecast, really.
That's fantastic. So you hand in your form. You've got your 28 days notice.
You don't even hand in a form. Do you know what's really sad? You do it on a computer, and nobody even knows. It literally took me 2 seconds on a computer. I resign. That's it. No contact from anybody.
How did you feel when you? I know how I felt when I retired, but I'd done my 30. How did you feel when you hit that button and nobody came back to you and said, "Look, we're sorry you're going"?
I was really sad. Really sad to be doing it. I'm very passionate still about the job. I love the people that work for the police. I love what they're doing. A police officer is one of the most important jobs in the UK.
Yeah.
They keep us safe. If the public knew the horror that police officers have to see and deal with, they'd never sleep. So I have so much respect. But handing in my resignation, I was really emotional on that day. It's a long time. It's my family. I'm giving up everything. But then not having any feedback back made me realise that it was the right decision. I'm not anything to anybody apart from the closest team members. You're a number. That's how I felt. And I had no contacts. My sergeant messaged me. I was working from home at that time because it was just during that COVID. So we weren't working from home, but it was a base. We were going in and out and seeing everybody everywhere, but it was our base. And she messaged me, and then she was off sick during that particular time. And then it was literally nothing, nobody wrong to say, why are you leaving? 17 and a half years service, never been in any trouble.
And this is West Midlands Police Service. This is one of the biggest police services in the country, and not one person could take the time to phone you up and say, Faye, why are you going? What can we do to make you want to stay? That's amazing.
Yeah. And then I had a letter the week before I was due to leave just to say, can I make sure I hand my radios back in, and can I remember that I've signed the Secrecy Act, whatever. And that was it. Nothing, literally nothing else.
No cup of
really
tea.
Bad, really.
No cup of tea. No, thanks so much for all you've done.
And I don't expect brass bands, but you do expect a company that is meant to care about people, or a service that's meant to care about their staff, just to take 2 minutes of the time to say, where did we go wrong? What can we do? Because, I'm not the first. This must be happening regularly to officers. They will get to a point, I believe, where they'll go, oh, my God, where did we go wrong?
But the police are hemorrhaging staff on a daily basis. People have had an absolute gutful of the lack of support right through. If you look at the population of the UK, the police service are underrepresented. Yeah. And they can't provide a service because they haven't got sufficient numbers. They need to have that support. Yeah. That is a real shame. How long have you been out now?
18 months. 2 years next January. Yeah, so about 18 months. And I love it.
Yeah. So, what are you doing now? I mean, you love it. You've set up a travel industry. Yeah. How did you get involved in that?
Well, travel, obviously, being an ex-elf, has always been a huge part of my heart. I love travel, always have done, always I'm looking at holidays, where I want to go, what I want to do next. And I'd looked at this business before COVID, and then obviously COVID happened, and I thought, right, I've just got to sit where I am and hold it out. And then I ended up having a look one night and saw the opportunity, and it's a franchise business. So when you start a franchise business, you have to put money up front, and managed to raise the money. I thought, I'm just going to go with it. I had a conversation with my husband, and he was all for it. He's a police officer as well. And I spoke to my dad, my dad would probably be the one who would dampen the flames of something and drag you back into the real world. And he actually said to me, just go for it, get out the police and just go for it. And I did, and I love it. And I didn't want to, I'd obviously got the photography business, but I didn't want to take more weddings on because I have a young family, and you have to commit, and you have to put your heart and soul into that. And it's lots of weekends. And I wanted to travel more. So I do both of them now. I do the wedding photography, pick and choose which ones I want to do when I'm available. And then I do the travel as well, looking for different types of holidays. And do you know when you feel like you've won the lottery? That's what I feel like. I feel, yeah, it's great.
And it's working for you
as well.
And it's working for you as a lifestyle, as a business. It's working for you, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I feel happier. I feel healthier. Don't get me wrong, it's hard work, but when you're in the police, you work hard. It's no different. It's scary at times when you know you've got to make your own money. You're bringing in your own money, but I don't think I've ever worked as hard as I have in the last 2 years. But it feels different.
Yeah.
If I was doing as many hours as what I'm doing now, if I would be on shift, I would be an absolute mess. But I'm doing this for myself and I love it. And it feels very, very different.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, when you run your own business, it is hard work. And you never actually have a day off. Even if you go on holiday, you don't have a day off when you've got your own business. But it's a choice that we make. I personally, I couldn't go back and work for somebody where I've got to ask for a day off. That's why I do what I do. And of course, you've just joined X-Job Services, for which I'm very, very grateful. It's our repository for really nice people like yourself. So, yeah, it's cool. And what sort of destinations are people heading to at the moment through you?
It's all different. People are, what I feel like when COVID happened, I think as we've come out of it, I think people have started to make real life-changing decisions, as I did with my job. But they want to travel more, without a doubt. Want definitely to do different types of holidays. So more kind of twin centre holidays. Staying in one place feels like it's just not good enough for a lot of people. They want to visit somewhere and then go to another place. So, and also places like holidays like cruising is becoming really, really popular. But during this particular time, so during the summer holidays, we're getting lots of Greece, lots of mainland Spain. Turkey's becoming extremely popular. And then we've got places that are up and coming, such as Slovenia, which looks great, absolutely beautiful. And then you're further afields that are really coming in probably as good a price as what a good holiday in Europe is coming in. So places like Mauritius and Thailand. Yeah, it's great. I could go on for days and days.
Lovely. And you've got your website, and all the links to your social media and your websites will be in the body of the text that's attached to this podcast. The future's buoyant for you, isn't it, Faye? I mean, you're really enjoying life, and you've got no regrets whatsoever, have you, about leaving the police service?
I don't have any regrets whatsoever. No regrets whatsoever. And I think when you come out, it's only now that you start to wake up, and you realise what you actually are quite capable of. I think that when you're in the police, you can kind of become in this little box. And I'm on my second business now, and I know that I'm building this, and then I know that there's a couple of other ideas that are going around in my head that I want to explore, that I want to look at. And if I was in the police, all that wouldn't be happening.
No.
You know, you can't be free. And when you come out, you have a real understanding of what that freedom is. It just opens so many doors. It's really scary. It takes a long time to get used to, but it is really, really worth it.
But do you know the real scary thing for me is that we need Fays in the police service. We need to have people that are motivated, that are forward thinking, that can deal with all types of issues. And if we keep hemorrhaging the numbers that we're hemorrhaging within the British Police Service, we will have nothing. And what will happen is private industry will take on the policing of the streets of the United Kingdom. We're already seeing it. There are already companies out there that are patrolling the streets of central London and beyond. And it's putting the onus, the payment onto other people.
Yeah. And I agree. And also, I think when there's somebody like me that comes out and makes things work, and then I would like to think inspires somebody else that's been unhappy in that position that I am, and inspires them to come out, there will be a huge problem. That, you know, because there's so much support now, so many people like the X-Job, the group that you run, there's lots of Facebook groups that people are running where ex-police officers are showing that you can be successful outside of the police. And I think it's really...
You're absolutely right, but you don't have to spend a huge amount of money to do it. To get involved in these different groups, there's some people that charge. I mean, which is counter me, if I'm perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
If we go back to your restorative justice area, where talking to somebody to find out what went wrong and why they did certain things. If a chief officer from the West Midlands Police said, do you know what, Faye, I really want to talk to you now, how would you feel about that?
I'd love to have a conversation. I'd be really happy to have a conversation.
That's interesting.
Conversations help.
Yeah, because they need to understand. And, the Home Sec and all the policing minister and all that, they need to understand that we need you. We need people that have been in 17 years to stay for that bit longer, to guide the youngsters through, because we're going to get, I can't remember the figures, but someone's telling me is, I don't know, 60% of the staff in 4 years' time will have less than 5 years in the job.
Yeah.
Where do you get your experience from?
I remember when I was young in service, and there wasn't, many people that hadn't got like 20, 25 years. We learnt so much from them. We learnt policing from them.
Yeah.
And that's what I carry through, and that's how I worked throughout the whole of my career. It was the old sweats. They taught us the real business.
Yeah.
They taught us how to deal with stuff outside the classroom. They taught us how to, not to carry the stress and the and to use humour to help you through. And all of that has just gone.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
It's died a death, but yeah, it is sad. Well, look, I say it to everybody that comes here, but have you got anything you'd like to add, alter or correct in relation to the statement that you've made today?
I would just like to say one thing to anybody that is unhappy in the police, that there are options out there. You don't have to sit and wait. Life is too short. Be brave. Get out and see what's available. Talk to people, network, and really understand all the skills that you've learned within the police are like gold dust outside the police, and you can do it. And that's probably what I'd really love to tell people that are in the police at the moment.
You're an absolute star, and they are the ones that can make the change. We can't do it for them, can we?
No, absolutely no.
Faye, thank you so much for your time today. It's been brilliant. We normally get the people that have done 30 years and they've gone on to do that, which is really cool. But to have somebody that has made that change in their life, for that, I'm really grateful. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.